back to the show. I'm here with Christian Taylor.
Hey.
And Sky Jatani.
Hi, Phil.
Hi. Who's not a longshoreman. He only...
This is my...
Plays one on TV.
This is my winter sweater.
So you're going to wear
like
that
Mr.
all
Rogers
winter?
sweater?
That's it?
Yeah.
I just need a pipe.
For Christmas, Sky could use another sweater. Note to everyone. Hey, now we have to do the third Larry. We did original Larry, Thoopy with lisp. We did secondary Larry, Larry with lisp. Now we have to do final, penultimate Larry.
Larry no lisp. Highly articulate, intelligent Larry.
Hi, kids. I'm Bob the Tomato.
And I'm Larry the Cucumber. Hey, it's the podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's the podcast. So there's no video, except there is. Hey, it's a podcast. So land it here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Sky and Christian, too.
Yes, you will.
We don't have a guest not here for you. So we got Larry the Cucumber in his third derivation. Hey, it's a podcast. So land it here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here.
Boy, you're really in a hurry today.
They're abusing Pete.
Sky has to go because Sky has an important meeting to go to, and we started late because of things that happened. That happened. I actually recorded a radio interview right here, right on our set, with Charles Morris of Haven Today.
Oh my gosh, you were being
He was here this
unfaithful
morning.
to us?
No,
Is
that's
that what
not.
you're saying?
No, there's no such thing as unfaithfulness to a set.
I don't know. It sounds like he's trying to replace us.
And it will benefit us because then everyone who listens to Charles Morris Haven Today will see me on my set because they'll put video clips on their website.
They have video of it?
They took a little bit of video because we had the lights on.
Did you talk about the podcast?
No.
Oh, see? Look at that. He's cheating on us.
I was
and
talking
not
about
being...
what's in the Bible, and I was talking about...
Thanks, Phil.
Why do we
chopped
call it
liver?
Christmas? You're a chopped podcast.
Okay, who is that guy anyway?
He's a very famous radio personality from Southern California.
I've never heard of him.
It's like Howard Stern, Rush Limbaugh, Charles Morris.
Well, what is his position in the world?
I don't think it's really like that.
Oh.
But I'm going to say that because it makes it sound better. What's his position in the world? He was upright. He was seated and upright. I don't know. We got other stuff to deal with because Sky has to go. And we are recording...
What are we recording?
On Halloween.
It is Halloween.
Oh, yes, we are.
It is.
Where's your costumes?
And I'm not going to say Happy Halloween because I know that not all of our audience celebrates Halloween because Christians have different views.
I'm dressed up as a lumberjack.
And I'm a longshoreman.
What are you?
I'm a podcast host.
Oh, good. You play the part well.
No, I'm dressed up as Phil Vischer, the host of What's in the Bible.
Oh, yes, you are.
Because this is how he dresses. Welcome back to the show. We're here with my friend Buck Denver to talk about What's in the Bible. Okay.
I have a question. Speaking of What's in the Bible, how is What's in the Bible doing? Because I haven't heard an update on that.
It's almost done.
Really?
Yeah.
Where is it in the process?
Almost done. I'm mixing the songs for the last one.
Which I heard is the most difficult part of the process.
Revelation. Oh, no. Song mixing is not the most difficult
what
part.
is?
No.
Writing
and trying not to commit heresy is the most difficult part. And trying to explain Revelation to kids is the most difficult part. But that's behind me. I've explained it. I've shot it. We've recorded it. Bill's editing it. And now it's almost done. And then it'll be out the door.
When
and people
can I
will
buy
say,
it?
now at last I understand Revelation. Thank you, Phil. And then...
So when can I buy it?
Not until next year.
Oh.
It's not.
I can't get it for Christmas.
We should package it together with Futureville.
Futureville Revelation.
Because it'll probably be coming out around the same time.
Oh,
yeah,
that could be fun.
Easter, we're coming out.
Oh, I'll be out before Easter.
And we could sell a DVD set of our first 10 podcasts.
It's a bundle. It's a package.
It's a bundle of fun.
Yes.
A bundle of pod.
It's a Phil bundle.
A pod of casts. So the BBC, a senior executive from the BBC this week lamented...
You have to do this in a British accent.
Yeah, you do.
Said, Britain has become a nation of religious illiterates who are baffled by biblical references in Monty Python film The Life of Brian. Here's the exact quote. The British public has such poor religious literacy that a modern audience would be baffled by the Monty Python film The Life of Brian because it would not understand the biblical references, a senior BBC figure has claimed. And do you know the senior BBC figure's name?
No.
Akil Ahmed.
That's interesting.
Yes, that's a good Christian name, I believe. Akil Ahmed, the BBC's head of religion and ethics, told The Independent that failings in religious education over 2 generations were undermining public understanding of contemporary national and international issues. You had generations that missed out. We have poor religious literacy in this country, and we have to do something about it, he said.
You're right, reading so fast and so English that I don't even know what you said. What'd you say?
Brits don't understand the Bible.
That Brits aren't learning the Bible.
And therefore they can't appreciate
the historical canon of Monty Python films.
And this is important. Why?
Because all humor in the modern world is based in some way on Monty Python.
Okay.
Well, it's interesting because we did a story earlier about Richard Dawkins, our favorite celebrity atheist, saying that people should have familiarity of the Bible because much of Western literature doesn't make sense if you don't know the biblical allegories and references that are being made. In fact, in his book, The God Delusion, which I just read a couple weeks ago, finally.
Are you convinced that he's a delusion?
That God is a delusion? Only to people who have a false view of God.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if there's a real God and you have the correct view of him, then that would not be a delusion.
That's
bada
true.
Boom, bada bing. Okay. Anyway, he at one point does like 4 straight pages of biblical references that are now common in Western thought.
Okay.
To say if you don't know the Bible, you don't know the source of any of these. He was actually promoting the idea that there should be a Bible in every British school library, which someone was trying to fund and the government had blocked, was not going to fund it themselves.
As a literature work.
As a work of literature, although his ulterior motive was because Tony Blair said, because it's the source of Western morality. And of course, one of Dawkins' major points is that it's terrible. It's not the source of Western morality. It has terrible morality, and he focuses on Judges and Joshua and all the warfare and such. And so he says kids need to read it so they can see how not a source of morality it is, how immoral it is. That's why he was behind it. Mr. Ahmed just thinks you need to know it because you won't even get all these jokes in Monty Python films.
Well, that's true, but there's also a deeper component to this, which I think is actually very relevant to
what do you think
our side of the problem. No, here's another quote from Mr. Ahmed. He said, one of the things we have to learn, one of the things we have to learn over the last 10 or 15 years is that religion is back in the public square. To understand a lot of what is happening around us, whether you're looking at what is happening in Syria or women wanting to cover their face in Bradford or Birmingham, or the demographic shifts in London with regard to party politics, you've got to have a conversation that looks at this through the prism of religion. So a couple of years ago, I was engaged in a conversation with some of the folks who were leading the White House Office of Faith-based and neighborhood
there
partnerships.
You go, drop in those names again.
But what was fascinating is prior to Obama becoming president, none of the departments in the government had an office of sort of religious affairs, meaning the State Department didn't have that,
right?
The Defense Department, Health and Human Services, and part of what they put in place is that now there are, I think, 18 different departments in the federal government that actually have somebody who brings religious awareness into the conversation. Because when you think about it, if you're trying to roll out healthcare changes or you're trying to roll out a policy from the State Department, since 9/11, we've been assaulted with the reality that we live in a very religious world. And you can't just make policy without thinking through the religious implications of these things. But it's pretty remarkable that a lot of Western governments have completely no system of factoring those into our policies and decision making. And that's essentially what he's saying here is even to understand what's happening culturally in London, you have to have some awareness of religion.
Well, and I think even if you want to understand what's going on in the greater, Eastern world, you need to understand how religion plays a part in their histories all the way back. And if you don't, then you have no context for understanding the conflict.
So do we agree with him? Do we agree with
I do.
Akil?
Yeah, I do.
I agree with him a lot.
But how can you, especially there's public religious education in much of Europe, not like they have different sense of separation of state and church than we do here. The question is, if you're going to teach, and this has been the question in the U.S. when the talk is about teaching the Bible as literature, who is qualified to teach it truly without bias? because you're going to have people falling on, in the South, they're going to be teaching it. And by the way, this is God's word. And in parts of the North, they're going to be teaching it. And by the way, we know now none of this is true.
Well,
how do you avoid that?
I think there's a different way to do it.
Oh, enlighten us.
So my daughter's in 6th grade, and in her social studies class, they're learning stuff I didn't learn until I was in college. And she's in 6th grade.
Really?
Well, that's kind of a good thing because we've been behind the education curve.
A little bit.
Like when I was in college, I never learned about 9/11. But now my kids are.
No, but seriously.
Ha, ha, ha.
My education in elementary school and middle school and even high school was all Western civilization based.
Yeah.
Right? She's doing a whole unit this year on the history of Islam and the Middle East.
Wow.
And history of African kingdoms and cultures. And so they're learning much more broadly, and they'll do India and Asia and some of these other things, which we never really touched on at all when I was a kid.
I didn't know China existed until I was married.
Stop it.
And you got all your gifts registered.
Yeah, I started reading the bottoms of my China.
So in that regard, I think you can also teach these faiths not just based on their scriptures, but the history of the faith.
Right, and how it affects.
But it would have to be a literature teacher. A literature teacher, a history teacher.
But no human is unbiased. That's the trick. Well, the same thing is happening in science right now, where too many science teachers can't help but bring a philosophical bias to what they're teaching. But you know what? It doesn't matter what
subject you teach. It doesn't matter which news you report. Everybody comes to anything with their own bias.
That's why we have to stop teaching children.
That would seem to be the only option.
Well, I do think it can be done. Maybe there's bias. There's going to be, like you said, bias in anything. But you can't just scrub out any religious education from our schools because it's a massive part of understanding history and politics and culture.
Right.
And
it seems like we've made a god of separating church and state, and it's like to the ridiculous.
That's probably a whole nother podcast.
Probably.
With my brother on, I would imagine. Because they don't have that in Britain, so that's not what they're talking about. There is no separation of church and state in Britain in terms of constitutionality, which is why they actually teach religion in schools. And I just don't know how you teach it, because I read this article, and then what I'm always curious about is, okay, let's read a few comments. So you scroll down to the end, and you get into the comments, and within about 3 comments, it's a flame war. It's just, well, your religion is stupid and behind all evil, and well, here's a Bible verse to show you how you're wrong, and you're ignorant. No, you're ignorant. We can't speak about these things.
Let me ask you guys, let's say hypothetically, there was a movement to teach more religion in schools, in public schools even.
To teach religious history? To teach religious thought?
Both religious history and the basic tenets of various religious traditions.
Okay.
So, this is essentially what Protestantism is, this is what Catholicism is, this is what Mormonism is, this is what Islam is. Would you guys object if your kids were being given passages of the Quran to read?
I think it would be awesome.
I don't think so. I would just be concerned about the shading of the instructor.
But see,
because it's almost
like their physical shading of their skin. Is that what would bother you? If they're too dark,
Sky.
I don't want them giving my.
Okay, I went to the Catholic University of America, and this is back in 1980.
Are you Catholic?
I am not, but I went to a Catholic university.
Yeah,
they had a fabulous drama program, and I taught at a Catholic school.
Yeah,
but anyway, all that to say, I took a class on all world religions, and was. Part of my grade was visiting a temple and a mosque and several different houses of worship.
Yeah.
And that class was taught to give me an understanding of world religions from an unbiased perspective and from firsthand experience.
Even though it was at a Catholic university.
And it was at a Catholic university.
And you found it to be unbiased.
And I did. Huh? And I grew from that, and it was awesome because for the first time, I was raised in a Baptist church. I went to an Episcopal boarding school. I went to a Catholic university.
Yeah.
But that was the first time that anything outside of like the Christian bubble was explained to me, and I was able to set aside how I was programmed evangelically to think about, even the Catholic Church. All of a sudden I was there, and for the first time I was at this Catholic university as a Southern Baptist child, and I realized there were lots of people there that loved Jesus and that knew the Bible and that, and when I went to I've met Jews who love Jesus, believe it or not. And, you know, it's just interesting. So I think there's a lot of value in that.
I think it would be wonderful. I don't know how you can do it on a really widespread basis with objectivity when it's a topic that so many people take so personally.
What about just exposing, like I had, like the firsthand, you know, meeting people, going to the churches and visiting and making up your own mind?
Our schools teach about politics all the time. And I'm guessing that about half the teachers who teach those courses are Democrats and probably half are Republicans, or maybe it skews more one way or another depending on the region you're in.
Yeah.
So we don't shy away from teaching political history or political thought in our schools just because there's bias.
No, I don't know how deeply they go into contemporary republicanism, and maybe they do.
Well, you don't have to go into
It's-
contemporary Christianity or Islam. You can just talk about historical.
All right, so that's what we'll do. We'll teach historical religion.
This is not insurmountable,
History
Phil.
of religion. I was concerned that it was,
It's
but now
not.
I see the
It's
error
very
of my
easy,
ways.
yeah.
Thank you, Sky.
It can be done. I think you have a very
Thank
you
you.
have a sort of a bad bias
You know-
toward, you know,
You know what I think the best way to teach religion to children is?
I can
on
guess.
a video.
Hell houses.
Oh, hell houses!
Yay.
I thought you were going to
Do you-
say what's in the Bible videos.
We've got an article by Timothy George. Timothy George is he's at Samford. What is Beeson School of Divinity, right?
Yeah.
He writes First Things. Of course, it's Halloween, and Halloween, he wanted to talk about the dynamic of hell houses. What's a hell house, you say? Hell houses can be found from New England to the Northwest, though they thrive in those red states where Pentecostal and fundamentalist churches are strongest. Hundreds of thousands of teens and tweens will stand in line for hours and pay good money in order to be scared out of their wits by this bizarre form of entertainment evangelism. Now, a hell house is basically a haunted house put on by a church that simulates going to hell, dying of...
How do they know what hell is?
Well, that's one of the criticisms of hell housery.
I mean, has anybody actually been there and come back to tell
I've been
about
to
it?
some pretty bad houses that were fraternities at Miami.
Yeah.
They qualify.
The late Jerry
My house,
Falwell...
sometimes I think it's a hell house.
The late Jerry Falwell is often credited with launching the current Hell House craze with his Scare Mare program back in 1972. But now there are providers that help thousands of churches that sponsor such events, and it's a mini industry. You can buy a kit for a couple $100 to help you put on a Hell House.
Boy, my boys would love that.
The Hell House Outreach Kit.
What? Are you
available,
serious?
Yes, available in all
At
50
Hobby
states.
Lobby, right?
Hey, I'm trying to talk here. Available in all 50 states and 26 countries around the world. It's sold to church leaders who want to, quote, get prayed up and powered up and, quote, prepared for the ride of their ministry life. The kit comes with this admonition.
Kit, that's cracking me
Shake
up.
your city with the most in-your-face, high-flying, no-denying, death-defying, Satan-be-crying, keep-you-from-frying, theatrical styling, no-holds-barred, cutting-edge evangelism tool of the new millennium.
Boy, they do have a power, like a flair for the dramatic.
I heard about these back in the 90s when I was in college, so it's not
No, it's not a new thing.
Yeah.
It's
No.
not. I mean,
But it's never been in a kit.
It's probably true.
It was one of the first responses.
It's been commoditized.
Here's what's weird. When I was in high school,
Yes.
okay, Campus Crusade put on haunted houses in our area.
Yes.
In Wheaton.
I remember
you
that.
You could go to a Campus Crusade haunted house. Not to teach you about hell or any evangelistic outreach.
To scare the poop out
It was
of you.
just to have.
And what did you get a track at the end? What was the deal?
There was no point. It was just
Just
you
for
know.
fun.
That's kind of uncrusade.
For fun, it is a bit. But then it was shortly, so that would have been about 1982 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly thereafter is when the conservative evangelical world kind of turned on Halloween, and there was a large movement to distance ourselves. No, Halloween is
I remember that. You know,
I
for a
do too.
time,
The devil.
we did not
right.
celebrate.
And then churches started doing harvest festivals all over the place. Harvest festival. We're having
Right.
a harvest festival. You can come, and they were
On Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween alternatives, like
Yeah. Right.
prom alternatives, so that you don't sin. So then we had harvest festivals, and we stopped doing, churches doing haunted houses. That's ridiculous. But it wasn't cool enough. Harvest isn't scary cool, and enter the hell house. And a hell house is basically you get to do a haunted house again, but it has a point. And the point is you don't want to go to hell, do you, kids?
Because this could be your everyday reality.
This could be your everyday reality.
that was the way I felt when I was 4 and they took me to visit the jail.
a real jail.
Oh,
A real jail.
Why?
This is like backwoods Mississippi, but they felt like we really...
Because they caught you moonshining?
They
Is that
wanted
the problem?
us little babies to know what it would be like.
Really? They brought just to...
I remember, like in this metal door, this guy was reaching his hand out and grabbing at me as I went by.
This was not a haunted house.
And was his hand all bloody and like a zombie arm?
This was a local jailhouse in Laurel, Mississippi.
And they brought a 4-year-old girl.
Yep. I was in kindergarten.
Did they bring the whole class? Was this a field trip?
This was a field trip.
Shut up.
It was a field trip to a jailhouse in Laurel, Mississippi. And then the next week, they took us on boxcars.
So you don't want to be a hobo?
And they would have us... No.
You don't want to be a hobo,
they would have us walk... I remember, like, they would have us cross from one car to the other, and I would look down, and I saw it going so fast, and I thought I was going to fall through the cracks. I kid you not. Maybe we didn't have anything else to do
I just want to point something out.
than go to the jail and, boxcars.
We need to point something out here. I saw a recent study that said that Mississippi had the lowest ranking public schools in the country.
Don't doubt it.
This might be why.
This might be.
Can I get back on topic?
Yes, you may.
And this was 1970.
Can I get back on topic?
Go right
Hell
ahead.
houses.
Is this your podcast or what?
I think it is. Me and Captain Kirk. What were we talking about? Hell houses. Yeah. Okay. So there's. So I go down and read the
International
comments.
House of
I
Hell.
always like to read the comments because people are so civil when they leave comments.
You just said this
anonymously online, and a number of people, are like, "What? I've never heard of such a thing. That's crazy. Why would you do that?" And a number of people are saying, "Well, the hell house that we do at our church isn't like that at all." So there's people.
Did anybody say? Do they really know what hell is like?
Hell housery.
Isn't hell just separation from God?
Well, the church has had different views on that over the centuries, and that they've gone from.
What do you think it is?
Hell is Waffle House. It's an eternal Waffle House where it's the same waffle over and over again.
And no bacon.
And no bacon. Because we're Jewish. No. What was my point?
You were going to tell me what hell is.
The comments, Phil. The comments.
The comments. So the people are defending it. We don't do it that way. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about the notion, Sky talked about the notion of what we win them with is what we win them to. And this is where this is disturbing because of the vision you're painting for kids to motivate them to follow Jesus is entirely fear-based.
Right.
It's you should follow Jesus. And also...
They should read Sky's book.
They should read all of Sky's books.
Clearly.
Then they
and
would
watch
know
all of
that's
my videos and then hire you as a voiceover actor.
Yes, definitely.
When fear... And this really kind of came about in the 70s and the 80s when I was a kid and the movies, Mark of the Beast, these apocalyptic
Jaws.
movies. No, not Jaws. Mark of the Beast was a Christian film.
Oh.
But it was a scare tactic.
Okay.
It was basically to scare you about what was going to happen at the end of the world.
I don't even remember that.
Oh, yeah, it was very popular. All the churches were renting it and showing it to their teenagers to frighten the bejesus out of them so they would come to bejesus. Yeah, for some people, but the issue is what kind of gospel have you preached? What kind of gospel have they received?
That you're going to be miserable for the rest of your life.
Unless you check this box. Check the box. Now I don't have to worry about it. That's not a relationship. You're not calling people into a relationship when you're trying to scare them into a conversion experience. That's my point.
Obviously, I completely agree with you.
No, you don't.
I do.
Okay.
But an even stronger argument is what and how was the gospel presented in the Bible? Right?
Jesus would dress up like a zombie and then say, "This is coming at you."
It's important to realize that Jesus never scared anyone into the kingdom. He didn't. The people he threatened were the ones who were barring others from him, right? The religious leaders, Matthew 23, things like that. Even perhaps more instructive is in the book of Acts, there are 6 gospel sermons, 6 times where the apostles stand up and preach to a crowd and present the gospel. Acts 2, 3, 4, 10, 13, and 17. In all those gospel preaching sermons, how many times is hell mentioned?
I'm guessing 0.
75.
0.
I was right.
So,
do they mention eternal damnation?
No.
Do they mention?
So here's the rundown.
Does that mean there's no hell?
This is kind of instructive. Of those 6 sermons, and if you add in 1 Corinthians 15, where Paul explicitly lays out his gospel, you add that all together. The number of times hell is mentioned, 0. Number of times heaven is mentioned, 0. Number of times sin is mentioned, twice. And yet typically the way we present the gospel is you're a sinner who's going to hell and you can go to heaven if you believe in Jesus. And we think that that's the gospel, but that's not what the apostles preached. So even on a more fundamental level, when they think that this scaring people out of hell and into heaven idea is the gospel, I think they're completely outside the boundaries of what the apostles themselves preached and presented. So we're not only winning people to something bad, we're not even winning them to the right thing.
Well, we should do something about that. We need to create an alternative Halloween event. Scare for the kingdom. No,
I don't think we need to do that.
No.
How about a corn maze?
But you know what I would like?
Maze, but it's like a theological corn maze, and it takes you through like the Calvin's tulip.
Here's the thing. I'll tell you what I would like. Sky, I'm actually finishing your book. I haven't ever talked about this before because I didn't want you to know how long it was taking me. But
it's really not that difficult a book to read.
It isn't. I lost it for a while.
I have gotten emails from people who have read it in one day.
Yeah, I lost it for a while and I had to buy one on Amazon. So I went ahead and bought 2 on Amazon.
So you have one to lose.
In case I lost my next one. But anyway, what I would really like, and I'm just now getting to the point where you're talking about, how nobody has told us how to be with God and how you have to have the desire, which is the desire for the car, and then you have to have that's sort of the example. Okay, you have to have the desire for the car, then you have to get the car, and then you have to experience the car, right? Okay, so that's where I am. And I think the problem is truly when I think about, well, how really do I walk with him and how do I desire him? Because if I have to be honest, I desire other things more than I desire him, even though I want to. So how is somebody going to teach me how to walk with him, how to desire him, and how to experience him in a way that I'm changed forever?
What I was doing in that part of the book was a subtle ripoff of Dallas Willard.
Okay.
So Willard presents all transformation happens the same way. It's a model he calls VIM, V-I-M, vision, intention, and means. So take it out of the spiritual realm for a minute. Think of, say, learning a foreign language. Before you actually learn it, you have to have a vision of how your life would be changed or improved if you could speak that foreign language.
Okay.
And then at some point, you must make a decision. You must take the initiative or intend to actually do it. Only when you've done the vision and the intention do the means come into play. Now the question is, how am I going to learn this foreign language? What tools am I going to use? Rosetta Stone? Am I going to take a class? Am I going to immerse myself in that culture? But if you don't have a clear vision or an intention, no matter how many means you throw at it, you're not going to learn it. So
it won't stick.
It won't stick. So, for example, I took 4 years of Spanish, 2 in high school, 2 in college. I don't know any Spanish. I only got through the college courses by flirting with my professor. Female.
No, I don't recommend. I don't recommend that.
Argentinian.
I don't recommend that.
I did fine. But I don't know any Spanish because I didn't have a vision for how my life would be improved if I could actually speak Spanish.
Or maybe you just didn't want to do your homework.
Maybe. But you go to places like China today and people are learning English at a crazy rate even though they don't have a lot of access to means because they have a clear vision of how their life will be better if they can speak English. All right, now take this into our spiritual life. We are inundated as a culture with means of growing as a Christian. More Bibles, more podcasts, more DVDs, more books, more churches, more conferences than any Christians.
What would Jesus do bracelets?
Exactly. So why aren't we seeing more people actually transformed into the image of Jesus? I think it's not because we lack means, but we lack vision. We don't have a clear vision of who Jesus is, so we don't actually desire him. And therefore, you can throw all the means you want at people, they're not going to engage them. So the question becomes not how do I walk with Jesus primarily, it's how do I get a clear vision of who he is so that I will actually desire him. And there's 2 pieces to that. It's what alternative vision are you buying into and where's it coming from and how can you begin to turn that off? And then how can you engage in things that will give you a clearer vision of who he is? So engaging scripture, reflection, meditation, prayer. But everyone's receiving a vision of their life from something, whether it's the media or what they're immersing their life into or mind. So we got to both turn that side off and turn the other side on.
Well, and I think it's really hard to envision what my life would look like. Because, for example, I talked about this last week. I'm reading Hannah Whitehall Smith's book. Well, she wrote The Secret of a Happy Life, The Christian Secret to a Happy Life. And so I'm reading her biography, which talks about her actual life. Her life was hell. I mean, literally, you
In
know,
a house?
she lost, it was probably in her house because she lost like 4 of 7 children.
Ugh.
Her husband cheated on her. He then eventually left his faith. You know, all of her children never became Christians. And so, you know, we are so like just clouded by our circumstances. Like we think that, you know, our circumstances are really the only vision we have for our life. Like, it's going to look this way with my family. It's going to look this way in my community or in my job.
It's our desires.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's all we know. It's the tangible here and now.
And
so I can't even imagine heaven or hell, because I don't know what they are.
And what's so challenging now is much of the American church has abandoned the idea that people's desires need to be transformed. And instead, we simply try to discover what do people desire, and then we tell them Jesus is how to get it. And that's how you get people to engage your ministry. So I really want a great marriage or a great house or a great car or a great job or a great life or better health or whatever. And then we just tell people Jesus is how you get that. But we never actually get to the place of saying, you know what, some of those desires may be good, some may be bad, but ultimately what we're called to do is desire God himself. And the church's primary job is to give a ravishing vision of who Jesus is. We don't do that. We make him a device. No.
We're not very good.
And instead we tell people, you should go to hell in a house. And you should go to hell with a mouse. And you should go to hell in a box. And you should go to hell with a fox. And we just
don't want to go to hell with a box or a fox. You want to go to Jesus with an aardvark. Now, would it help?
There's a T-shirt. Go to Jesus with an aardvark.
Do you think it would help people get a vision of living with Jesus if their pastor builds a 16,000 square foot house?
Absolutely.
Pastor Stephen
I'm going to go out on a limb and say no.
Of Elevation
No.
Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, has sparked monumental controversy over a new 16,000 square foot home he's building with his wife, Holly. Despite the attention, Furtick doesn't appear to be backing down or apologizing. He spent the first 10 minutes of his Sunday sermon essentially defending the home and proclaiming that all blessings come from God. My wife and I made a decision and we built a house, he said. That's a pretty good statement of facts. But
Okay.
the records show my wife and I made a decision and we built a house, he said. It's a big house.
With many, many rooms.
It's a big house.
Can we play football there?
And it's a beautiful house. And we thank God for it. We understand everything we have comes from God. Okay. God did not buy them a house. I'm just going to go out on that theological limb and say, because one of the contentions here, his point is all good things come from God. Mm-hmm. All blessings come from God. The question is, how are we defining blessing and how are we defining good things? And did God buy you the house, or did God provide you? Did God put you in a situation? And this is a touchy subject, and I'll admit that. Did God put you in a situation where you have gifts or abilities that allow you to generate financial resources, which then you are choosing to use to bless yourself? That's my question.
I would go with that one.
I don't disagree with that. I think that the issue here is not that he has a big house or that he spent lots of money on it.
Or a big mouse.
Yeah, or a box or a fox or a goat or a boat. The issue is...
What if it's a really nice goat?
Furtick has defended the house, saying that the money he used to purchase the house came from his book sales and not from his church salary.
Not from the church, right.
And that may well be true, but what a lot of people don't realize is that the way the evangelical industrial complex works these days is that...
Wait, say that again. The evangelical industrial complex. I like that.
It's all leveraged on where do Christians aggregate.
What?
And they used
Listen to him throwing all this around.
Well, where do Christians gather? They used to be Christian bookstores. It used to be music festivals, things like that. Now it's megachurches.
Right.
And so megachurch pastors, many of them, will write books, but they use their churches as the marketing and platform and distribution agent for the book. So the church puts tons of money and effort and resources in broadcasting sermons about the book and distributing the books and all kinds of creating videos about the books, and then the pastor...
So it's hard to separate the church from the book, you're saying.
Exactly. But then the pastor
Maybe that's why yours is not doing so well.
Right, because I'm not a megachurch pastor.
So Rick Warren did something interesting when his book, Purpose-Driven Life, took off, sold more copies than any nonfiction book in the history of American publishing. He gave back to his church all the salary he had ever drawn from the church. Basically said, you have given me nothing, no money at all, and I'm going to keep the book profits over here. And I'll live off that, and I don't need to draw a salary. That seems like a way to attempt to detangle
And I would also add
the issue.
that Rick Warren still lives in the same house that he bought long before
Yeah.
Well, and there's
Purpose-Driven Life, which is a very modest home in Southern California.
There's Francis Chan, who he lives off of 10% of his book sales and doesn't take a salary either, and then returns whatever he can, and uses it for where it's needed. And I mean, I have huge respect for that.
And the other complicating factor in this is that, and Furtick is not the only one who does this, but his salary is secret. The church members don't know what his salary is, nor do they get access to it, because the people who determine his salary are a board of overseers who are comprised of 5 other megachurch pastors, none of whom live in Charlotte or attend his church.
Oh, that's not good.
So the lack of transparency, I think, is what's raising
that's
a lot of
problem
eyebrows.
for Christians.
So one guy I heard on this topic said, look, if a church wants to pay their pastor a huge amount of money, and if they want their pastor to have a $2 million house and all that, fine, the church can do whatever they want, but the church members should know that that's what's happening and not be unaware of where their giving is being spent.
It's easy to pile on guys like this because it's so obvious. The conspicuous consumption is so obvious. Where it always gets tricky is then when you say, okay, so how much is it okay for a pastor to spend on a house? And because you come to the point of, here, and then you fall into legalism, and you fall into
Well, I think the issue is more the matters of the heart, really, like what you were saying. You can,
but I don't know that there's ever a heart position that you would come
isn't
to where
perception
you say,
reality, though?
I'm gonna buy a $10 million house.
I think there's
$20 million.
The rule of thumb I use, because with my millions of dollars, I have to be very careful with how I spend my money. Someone gave me some advice once that applied to what a pastor wears, what a pastor drives, and where a pastor lives. And essentially, the rule of thumb was you want them all to be non-issues. So if you're looking to buy a car, if the car you're driving becomes a distraction in your ministry, then don't buy that car. Or if where you're living is going to be a distraction to your ministry, and so it becomes very culturally bound and it's not a hard and fast rule.
Bill Hybels at Willow Creek Church he told a story once, and I was there at the church, that he had a car dealer who went to his church, was a friend of his, say, hey, I want to loan you a car to drive for a while, just for fun. And he loaned him a brand new Corvette. And so for a week,
a lot of fun.
For a week, Bill Hybels was driving around in this brand new Corvette that was not his, until he became so uncomfortable with it that he went back and said, I can't drive this around, even though it's not mine. I didn't pay for it. Just the appearance isn't good, and he gave it back. Now, a lot of people will spend a lot of money that isn't visible. Joyce Meyer has been criticized because she has a jet. Michael W. Smith used to have a jet, a private jet, which he said was so he could spend more time with his family. But a private jet is, $10 million to buy and $1 million a year to maintain, and then it's insane. So I don't know. For me, that's always been my attitude with cars, because when I was running VeggieTales and when VeggieTales was doing really well, there was a lot of money around. And so the issue was, what do I feel comfortable? What's my theology of wealth? What do I feel comfortable saying? And for me, it was always, what statement would this make? Mm-hmm. What statement would this make about my values? And for me, I could never own a car that is from a luxury brand. Okay, BMW, Mercedes, Lexus.
I gotta hit the button now a bunch of times. Taco's getting busy.
And the reality is that an entry-level BMW actually costs less than a loaded Chevy SUV. But that's not the point.
It's a perception.
It's a perception
That's
thing.
what I said. Perception is reality.
It's a statement of values, And another thing that really shaped me was Time Magazine did an interview. I think it was Hezekiah Walker, the pastor in New York City, who was the pastor to like the hip hop community for a while in the 90s. And Time Magazine interviewed him. And the first line of the interview was, Hezekiah Walker drives up in his black Mercedes. And the reality was, it might not even have been his car. It might have been given to him. He might have bought it used for $4,000. It didn't make any difference that the reporter was looking for something. They were looking for a story, and Hezekiah Walker handed them the story they were looking for.
I remember...
and that's why Sky drives a scooter.
That's right.
And you live in a box.
And I live in a box with a mouse.
A fox.
Yeah. Years ago, I was speaking at a conference, and rule of thumb is you want, I'm there to present Jesus, right? You want people walking away from a sermon impacted by.
Well, I hope so. You're
By
supposed to
God,
be
right?
the man giving me a vision.
You don't want them hung up on how you look,
Right.
or your clothing or whatever. So,
Right. And that's when you stop styling your hair like a televangelist.
So before
big font.
the conference, there was a group of us who were gathering to pray backstage somewhere, and I didn't realize this, but apparently as I was praying, someone was able to see down my neck at the tag on the back. I was wearing a plain white dress shirt, and they saw the tag on the back of my shirt. Later on, my wife overheard this person commenting about how disturbed they were that I had such a fancy shirt. And I don't even remember where it was from, but I'm pretty sure that
Brooks
shirt.
Brothers,
it was
guessing.
probably not more than a $25 shirt, right? But it's a plain white dress shirt. There's no
and you
logo.
probably
Right.
got it at Goodwill.
And that seeing that label on the back of my neck somehow prevented her from probably hearing what I had to say that night, just
Right.
because they saw that silly, stupid little label. And so, in my view, I don't want any of this stuff to be a barrier,
Hindrance.
a hindrance.
Right.
And so,
Right.
I think that's more important. So when Stephen Furtick has to use 2 sermons at his church to talk about his house,
To defend his house,
something's awry.
wrong.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we all agree about that.
Okay, so how much can a pastor spend on his house? Did we figure
We're not going to
out
be legalistic
what-
about that.
No? Okay, because,
Well, on the other side of it, so I actually did a little research online to see, is anybody at Elevation Church actually angry about this? Or
Yeah.
so I couldn't find anything online about it. And my hunch is probably most of the people at the church really don't mind that he has a $2 million house.
Does he live in an affluent, and pastor in an affluent community?
It's Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh.
But and part of you also have to realize that what is taught at a church is going to impact what people think their
Right.
pastor
True.
should,
Right.
So
well, there are a lot of communities where if the pastor is dressing well and looking good, that's a sign of, well, he's a good pastor.
There's
That's
the
blessing.
prosperity gospel preachers on television
Yeah.
who do have that kind of lifestyle, and I believe
Yeah.
people watch that and buy into that because that's what they want.
You got to
so?
remember that a key component of celebrity is aspiration. People make celebrities because they want to be like that other person. So when a pastor has a $2 million house and is living this extravagant lifestyle, if the people there are really there because of the pastor rather than Jesus,
Right.
they might be just fine with that because he's living the lifestyle that they aspire to.
Right, and I want mine. I'll get mine eventually. If I do everything this guy says, I'll get mine.
You're
You know,
never going to get yours.
Sky and I have a lot of followers simply because of our physical beauty.
That's what I'm banking on.
I'm not even touching that with a 10-foot pole.
If you got it, flaunt it.
You laughed. Okay, Sky has to go to a meeting.
I do.
He has a very important meeting because he's a very important and busy individual. So, what should we sing about today?
Dr. Seuss rhymes.
Yes. Great idea.
Come on, Phil.
Come on.
We didn't talk about
Yeah,
that.
we
we did.
did. We
We
talked
did.
about
We talked
a house and a mouse and a box
Wait,
and
we
a
got
fox.
Stephen Furtick's house and a hell house. We got a house theme.
Okay.
And he lives in a box with a fox.
Right, okay.
And I am a fox.
Hey, 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 what if you were a mouse? Would you want to be caught in a hell house? 'Cause you don't have a soul, so you can't be saved. So I guess you're gonna burn, little mouse. That's too That's too bad. I wish Pastor Furtick he was your dad, 'cause then you'd be in a very, 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 very large house with probably a little mouse house in the backyard just for you and the 7 dogs. And wouldn't that be better? But if you had a fox, you could put him in a I didn't want to do this. You said, "Oh, do the mouse
This
house."
is like a hell
Fox,
podcast
Fox. Hey, it's all well. Let's not tell our kids about hell when they're quite so young, 'cause it's not much fun. And the love of Jesus is the thing that gets the job done much better and more effectively. And it's actually theologically accurate, whether you're a mouse in a house or a fox in a box, or Sky, an amazing specimen of physical beauty. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.